Should we give it a 3 to 5 more minutes?
Yeah, that's good with me. I don't know if that's okay with everybody else. I don't know how many people we have so far. It was about 11.
Yeah, 11.
Uh, yeah, sure. Uh,
Oh, we've got up to 13. We're getting there.
I hope people weren't expecting the congresswoman or the senator. Spoiler alert, they will not be joining us.
I don't think we put yes, we did. Okay. Uh, Shall we give it a go now, Ed?
Sure, Elizabeth, that sounds good.
Okay, doke. Okay, good evening. Welcome everybody to the Zoning and Development and Housing Committee meeting of December. Um, I am co-chair Elizabeth Ashby. Ed Hartzog, my co-chair, is also here. I don't know whether, oh yes, Anthony Cohn is here and he's our third co-chair.
There he is.
And before we get on with the meeting, um, I want to introduce Kevin Wu, who will explain how to play the game here, how to get attention, and how to participate in the meeting. Kevin?
Welcome, everyone. If this is your first time joining us virtually, you will notice that you are currently muted, and everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except for the committee co-chairs, Ed, Anthony, and Elizabeth, and any presenters as we move through the agenda. As we move through the agenda, the co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to React icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button, not the wave or thumbs up, as those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is available for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of the co-chairs. They will not see the chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go to participants section where you will find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me, I'm here for support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Now it's over to you, Ed. Ed Hartzog will present item 1.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. So we're not sure how long tonight's meeting will be, but we have 2 items for your consideration. And before we jump into them, I just wanted to give you a heads up as to why they're on the agenda and what we were looking to do. You'll notice the first one is a recent bill that was introduced by our local congresswoman, not ours, but up in the Bronx and Queens, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Tina Smith from Minnesota. They had introduced a housing bill towards the end of this Congress, and we thought, since it's on the agenda all the time and it is such a pressing issue that anybody anywhere attempting to do anything to generate housing, we're willing to listen to. So we had reached out to the Congresswoman in the hopes that we might be able to get her staff, either in Washington or here, to maybe do a little presentation for us as to what it is that the bill is all about. Unfortunately, those of you following what's going on in Washington, the Congresswoman has been a little busy with Democratic caucus business, and she and her staff weren't able to make it. So unfortunately, I am the poor substitute in the world of economics, substitute good. So I've put together a very short PowerPoint, full confession. I lifted it from other sources, but we'll take us through it. And then for the second item, for those on the board, you may have been doing some leadership training with the Borough President's Office. One of the trainings recently, I believe on the 29th, Irita, I think you might have been there as well. Many of us were, for the affordable housing session. We thought as co-chairs that it was very, very good. I think we mentioned in our last meeting that we were going to try and invite one or all of the speakers to come. We were not able to reach them. So again, in the hopes that they will be able to make it, one of especially the first 2, maybe next month or thereafter, we thought we'd at least try to show you some of the things that they had talked about, maybe to spur discussion. Again, some very good statistics, some stuff about finance that we don't necessarily always touch upon. So this month's meeting is more housing heavy than usual zoning and development, but they're all interrelated, as we all like to talk about. So without further ado, I guess if there aren't any questions, I'll jump into the first one and try to get through it as quickly as I can. All right, now in terms of sharing my screen, let me see if I want to make sure I don't. Where do I find that one, Kevin? Where does that's under?
It's at the bottom, the green button that says share.
There we go. Sorry. The green one blinking. Let's see. Do we have it? Can you all see it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So anyway, forgive me for not being able to make this a larger. Let me try and move you all to the side. Okay, good. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for the heads up. So anyway, the name of the bill is the Homes Act of 2024. As I said, introduced by Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez of New York. Here in the chat, I will do it later on in between, or I have a link to the text to the bill if anyone's interested, and a section by section breakdown from Senator Smith's office. I have it here, and I'll put it in the chat for those of you who may be interested. So essentially, what this bill would do is establish a national housing development authority that would acquire and develop real estate to create and maintain a stock of permanent, sustainable, affordable housing, including single and multifamily housing with robust tenant protections. It would empower local communities to address their specific housing needs by financing real estate acquisition or conveying property to public housing authorities, mission-driven nonprofits, tenant or resident-owned cooperatives, state and local governments, and community land trusts. It would require the Housing Development Authority to maintain portfolio-wide affordability by setting aside 40% of units for extremely low-income households and 30% of units for low-income households. It would also cap rents for units financed under the Act at 25% of a household's adjusted gross income, and it cannot increase more than 3% per year. The bill would also support home ownership by allowing residents to purchase homes under shared equity models and provide relief to mortgage borrowers at risk of foreclosure due to market instability or economic distress. It would provide workers with strong labor protections building the new housing and provide tenants with opportunities to come together to purchase their buildings prior to large for-profit developers buying them. It would provide funding to rehabilitate and address backlog of necessary improvements for public housing and repeal the Faircloth Amendment to allow new public housing, and authorize $30 billion in annual appropriations combined with a revolving fund to recoup and reinvest funds back into housing. Annual appropriations include a 5% minimum set aside for tribal communities and a 10% minimum set aside for rural communities. The Climate and Community Institute did a analysis of the bill. As we just went through, would establish a housing authority to finance, repair, build millions of affordable rent-controlled resilient housing units. The Climate and Community Institute, the Urban Democracy Lab at NYU and Socio-Spatial Climate Collaborative at UC Berkeley researched the impact of the legislation. And the following is a breakdown of their analysis of the bill. It shows that the $30 billion investment, which is the same as the mortgage interest deduction that the government provides as a benefit to homeowners, together with a new revolving loan fund, would enable the act to create approximately 1.25 million new social housing units. Approximately 875,000 of those units would be affordable to households at 0 to 50% of area median income, which is 70% of the authority's portfolio. Specifically, their estimates indicate that 500,000 units would be available at 0 to 30% of AMI. 375,000 units would be available at 31 to 50% of area at AMI. And it would generate up to 427,000 total jobs annually, including up to 161,000 direct, well-paying union jobs in the building trades industry each year. There's more information here about it. We'll have the presentation available. I'm sure Kevin posted somewhere. So if you want to, you can click on these sites. And of course, different additional information here as well. In the meantime, I guess I'll throw it open for questions if anybody has any, and set up for the next presentation, if that's all right. Great. Michelle?
When you say the next presentation, do you mean on the same topic or do you mean agenda item 2?
I meant agenda item 2.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I didn't want to jump in and disturb, your presentation.
No. Sorry to go through so quickly. I know it's kind of tough.
No, I'm glad. We just got a copy of this bill It's over 90 pages.
Yes.
I started to plow through it. Obviously, did not have time to really digest it. The first many, many pages were definitions. So by the time you got through that and to the meat of it, it was a long way in. So I'm not so sure, you know.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so
If I
I
could just if I could just say real quickly, the three of us, the co-chairs, I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of school for all three of us. Just to allay any thoughts you may have, no one's looking to make a resolution here about this bill. Just in
right.
case you were thinking that we expected you to digest as if it's Albany in April. Sorry to our state legislators, but or whatever it may be. We were
Yeah.
just again passing it along, and sorry to so much of it, but
Yeah,
there's
no, good, good.
that
I'm glad to hear that this is informational and a discussion. And
right.
here's what I'd like to suggest. Um, because I have some questions already, but I suspect as everybody plows through it, there'll be a million of them. And in addition to try to address some of our questions tonight, I'm wondering if it wouldn't be a good idea to divide the bill. We did this when we looked at a lease, I think the Armory lease or something, where we took the document and we divided it up a number of pages, and we had a bunch of us that took the number of pages, and then we reported on those pages and our comments, suggestions, and whatever. So we don't, no one of us has to be that conversant with all 90, right off the bat. So I'm just going to suggest that if you go forward, that maybe that's a way to handle it. In my initial and very, very, very initial perusal, I didn't pick up, but again, I didn't get past page 30, so it could very well be there. So it may be in there, but here would be some of my thoughts or questions that I would have. Number one, who's determining where the property is, the where? Number two, does the community have any input as to those locations? Um, who has the ultimate oversight? Because it's one thing to have this board or bureau or whatever it is. Certainly doesn't sound bad. Do you want somebody providing affordable housing? Sure. But like everything, the devil's in the details. So we want to make sure that this bill, as proposed, is a real force for good, and that the unintended consequences of it don't demean its force for good and create so many other issues and concerns as to render this one a bad idea. So I can't make any comment about that now. I have no judgment on it because I haven't read it. And I suspect that just reading it once is not going to be enough. I mean, I think this requires a real good study of it. So I just wanted to say that, and I'm looking forward to the details. So I'm hoping that that's going to be our focus and that we have a process by which we could look at those details. And I suggested one, there may be others. So thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michelle. Those are some great thoughts. We'll definitely pass them along. And just before we move on to Sahar, I was just going to say, when we thought about doing this at the time, there was pre-election. We had no idea with respect to Congress who would be controlling. So, all of us here are pretty savvy with civics, and we're not sure in terms of this bill moving forward. What its likelihood is, in terms of progressing, but in terms of just the discussion for everyone, really like the thoughts, Michelle, and, just in terms of, again, spurring discussion about these things and others. Again, thanks so much. And, okay, we will take Tara up, please.
Ed, we have a member of the public, Glenn.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Glenn.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm new here. But I was going to the gym on 61st and I saw this community board on an advertisement on one of those really cool kiosks. And I don't know if this is relevant to this particular bill, but my company, I'm the chief government affairs officer for a tech development startup with sustainable home ownership, where we convert commercial to residential buildings. We actually have an order now for 10 buildings across the country, and we have capacity to create and convert 150,000 homes with assistance with governments. I think it's pretty important here with the City of Yes program. So I'm just offering this as another alternative. We don't require subsidies. We just look for buildings that are able to be, we don't need tax breaks. We don't need anything like that. We don't even use the sewer or city resources. We recycle everything in the building itself. And so it's pretty fascinating stuff. But when I saw this home ownership and affordability, I think we can really help here in the city, and especially all of the data that we have. There's 123 buildings within the borough of Manhattan that are coming on default in the next quarter. Also very important information, so they're not going to be able to pay back their loans. So I'm just asking, folks in charge here on this call if there's opportunity to help me, help us get these units, and we actually convert in less than a year, so folks can actually get into these homes. Now, these are home ownership. They are not luxury, but if you go to Urbana Systems online, I can't put the chat feature here to look it up, but it's really gorgeous, sustainable homes. It's not Section 8. It's not anything like that, but we want to increase tax base in our communities and have really gorgeous, stunning qualities of life for citizens. So that's why I'm here. I thought this would be relevant just to
Yeah. Well,
shout it out.
right. Thank you, Glenn. That's very interesting. Now, do you live in our community board district?
I don't. This is I live in Dumbo. That's the Brooklyn Bridge there, but I see you have a bridge in your background too. So we're bridge neighbors, bridge twins. But we're doing some work.
Well, I was gonna. Oh, sorry to cut you off, but I was gonna say I don't. This is our community board meeting. It sounds like you're, I think, looking for more, uh, if I may, business development, that kind of thing. And I have to say, I mean, while very interesting, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate in this
Okay.
venue for that. I didn't want to cut you off to start with, but you got the plug in, and it's great and nice to know. And we welcome you and everyone to anything that is affordable for people, and certainly is someone who has a soft spot for environmental. I'm very happy about the sustainability factor. And please stick around, because the second part of this will be about financing.
Okay.
Maybe your organization is part of some of that part as well. But anyway, I'm going to move on. If we have anybody else from the public who's, and apologies if I missed out. No. Okay. All right. Sorry. Back to you now. Back to the board members.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And this is great. Was a great presentation. And as Michelle said correctly, we have to go through it, and it will take a longer while. But there was this one from your presentation that I want, if you could explain what that is.
Sure.
My knowledge is very limited. It says I'm going to read out your whole thing, and it talks about Fair Cloth Amendment. What exactly is that? It says provide funding to rehabilitate and address the backlog of necessary improvements for public housing, and repeal the Fair Cloth Amendment to allow new public housing.
I knew you were going to.
What's that?
Should be citing chapter and verse on that, but this Fair Cloth Amendment sets a cap on the number of any units could own and operate. Any public housing authority can own and operate. In '98, the government created, so I'm reading, an artificial barrier by eliminating the number of public housing units that the authority could build, and is so it looks to lift that restriction as
Sorry,
well.
what was the restriction? I'm sorry, I
On the
didn't.
number of units, that a public housing authority can own and operate.
So that was the
It
Fair
would
Cloth Amendment. Okay.
So it would increase it. I would imagine that just teasing out what I remember from public policy school, that creating more conversation. Someone, I think, on the other side of that argument, if they want to increase the ownership and the number of units, their immediate response to that would be, have you seen the number of units under management at NYCHA? And you're lifting the cap so they can be managing more. I see Barbara nodding. And, again, that's not for us to decide. And that's not for me to decide in any way, shape, or form. I just toss that out there. But that is what the Fair Cloth Amendment is.
So it's increasing the number of units that get be mapped. So it's a number game, right? Like it's a number value. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Barbara Rutter. Oh, there we are.
You hear me now,
Okay,
right?
there we can. Now we
Well,
can.
first of all, Michelle read 30 pages, which I didn't, but she had said a lot of things that I was going to, and I wanted to comment on something Glenn said. Just a couple of things that came through. This is something that it sounds like it is a rule for the whole country, whether it's Idaho or Boston or New York, it will be the same thing, which of course can be problematic. I think the cornfields of Idaho is a little different than Dumbo, and can be different. There was something about no more than 4% raise. I can tell you, in my building, we went through a couple of years of having very low percentages raised, and one time we needed 15%. To put that as a law is worrisome for me, because we know that the economy changes, and what happens if the landlord can't afford to take care of it. We know that there's problems with NYCHA. I'm for NYCHA. It's a good idea, but it's certainly problematic. Hard for me to imagine how something national can work. I'd be very interested in Michelle doing much more work. I'm interested in much more of it. It's a great idea. Is there a feeling that it's a practical thing to do? Ed, could you answer that?
I don't know, Barbara, it's interesting you say that. I think I don't really know. And that's why we're hoping to have one of the staff members here, is to talk about some of those questions you're having, and even to pass along the issues you're raising. I don't disagree with any of the things that you said or anybody's mentioned. I don't know in terms of practically, again, where this is really going. It's awful late in the season, Congress-wise, to be introducing it when it was so close to the election. And again, in terms of the local congresswoman, the other team is in charge and in setting the agenda. So I don't know. I don't know if they have.
I don't know the senator. Is she
Going.
Democrat or Republican?
AOC is a
the senator. The senator.
Democrat senator, I believe it is.
Okay, so
yes.
it's both Democrat.
Right.
Okay,
so,
but
yeah.
even the concept of it is interesting, but I just can't imagine. I just can't imagine. And I also want to say something that Glenn said. So as co-chair, and Sahar as co-chair too, as co-chair of the Environment Committee, talking about sustainable housing is fascinating. That doesn't even something, Glenn, that it's interesting, and maybe would write something to the community board that we can talk about at some point. I'd be interested in that. Yeah. Sure. How it's done and so on. But we've had meetings about it, that, Roosevelt Island has a passive house and things like that. But thank you, Ed. You certainly brought it.
Well, sure. Again, Marco. Thanks, Barbara. Marco.
Thank you, Ed. Just confirm what I'm going to say. You said that there are $30 million. Is that correct?
I think that was. Bear with me for a second. Hold on a second. I think that's what they said. the analysis shows a $30 billion investment.
Okay. And then you said with that, we're going to build $1,052 units.
Yeah, it looks like
I'm right or wrong?
I'm sorry?
I'm right or wrong? They're
Yeah,
going to
it
build
said,
1,252.
according to the Climate and Community Institute, their analysis was that that $30 billion investment, together with a revolving loan fund, the Homes Act would enable, looks like 1.252 million total new social housing units.
1.52 million. That's
Right.
what you say?
Yes.
Well,
That's
the
not
number
what I'm
doesn't
saying.
match.
That's not, that's not me. That's
No,
them.
I know that. But the point is, I think the numbers doesn't match. I mean, I think this at this point, even Adam Wald can mention that with $30 million you're gonna build 1 point whatever amount of housing. It doesn't match. It doesn't have numbers. It's not against you, by the way, but I think it's probably is misleading or something like that. But it's impossible to build that quantity of housing. And that's basically, I mean,
Well,
the intentions are good. Like a city of years is good, but no, not enough for the
well,
countries that we
I
live.
think what they were saying, Marco, was that with some sort of revolving loan fund, which I'm not really sure what that meant, to be honest with you. And I didn't get that far, Michelle. You were even ahead of me at 30 pages. I'll be honest with you. Getting ready for the meeting, I did the Cliff Note version of the Congresswoman's website to kind of give everyone an overview. So I don't know, Marco. You might be.
No. I'm not asking anything to you. The only thing is I had to verify the numbers that I saw because you didn't do anything at all. You just only the messenger, and that's it. So, but my main concern these numbers doesn't match, doesn't add it. And I think something is wrong in the process because you cannot build that quantity of housing. There are two experts right here that we have in this meeting, and they can tell that it's impossible to build that quantity of housing. Intentions are good. We have to congratulate for that. But with the crisis that we live, intentions is not good enough. I think I'm going to end it right here. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Marco. We'll certainly pass it along. Hi, Rita. Rita Popper.
At least we know people are thinking about it. This is only, a dream. But then again, Mitchell-Lama was also a dream, and it came to pass with the help of the federal government and the state government. And that was nationwide, not New York City wide. Section 8 housing is across this country. Let's give them, they're talking now. We should be impressed that they're talking. As they say, I'm from Missouri, show me. But let's not, it's not in, what we are reading is their wish list. They are not doing anything with that list. So let's take it for what it is. We're having a discussion on air, but that's just me. I'm glad that they're talking about it.
Well, that was our hope, Rita, is that, we'd get the discussion going. Who knows, inside this bill, there might be some good idea, something that does something, that moves the ball down the field. So
right.
Who knows? Anyway, we appreciate everybody's thoughts. Like we said, we'll pass along your suggestions, issues, questions after the meeting. Hi, Barbara.
Just too much. First of all, thank you, Rita. That is actually what I was saying, that this was, whether it passes or not, Ed, you brought up a discussion. And I think that's a great idea. I did want to say one thing, and it's, I'm reading, believe it or not, for the first time, The Power Broker, and how, Moses would confiscate land from little people and everything. And I go around in my head saying, is he a good guy or a bad guy? And I think the answer is both to some degree. And I hope this things as we get along and read it, that there's no confiscation of land without. I could just see, farms being disappeared and things like that. And that's another thing that,
Sure.
because of the power broker, which is I'm hoping to get through it.
Right. Michelle?
Yeah, so maybe can we at this meeting tonight decide how we're going forward and maybe divide out? Because eventually, if you're thinking you want to make comment, even if it's not a resolution, but if you ever want to comment on it or forward any suggestions, we have to be conversant with it. So what do you think about the idea of having a few of us volunteer and giving us page numbers, and we read those page numbers, we offer our opinion about it, and then at our next meeting, put it on the agenda in January that we all report on our page numbers. It's 90 pages. If 3 of us pick up 30 pages each, I don't know about that beginning. As I said, that was all definitions, so I'm not quite sure where that ends and the substance begins. But from the page where the substance begins, if we can divide it up between 3 of us, I'm willing to be one of 3 and read it, make comments, come back next time.
Right. Well, I go along with whatever the committee decides, but I don't know if that was something that we had thought about as co-chairs on this. And again, I'm not sure, just to be, more political than not in a community board meeting, but I think civics related. I don't know where this is going, so I'm not sure. I appreciate you taking on 30 pages. I don't know who else would go with 30. I don't know.
Whatever.
Well, no, I'm saying is that
it could be 4 of us at 20, but
well,
I don't think.
I think it's
let me
terrific.
Just finish
I think it's terrific, but I'm not sure. My point is, I don't know. Even if we brought it up, even if we did that, I don't know where. With all due respect to the congresswoman and the senator, honestly, I don't know where the bill's going.
I understand that.
And so
I'm not even thinking about that. I'm not even thinking about where it's going. It may die. The point is, we introduced it as an agenda item. So it certainly, I think, behooves us to know what it says. So I think we should just fulfill that obligation to read it, report it back to the committee, have our comments ready because we have read it. And that's it. And if we never see it again, we never see it again. But if we do, we'll be prepared.
Okay. Well, I will go along with my co-chairs on that and the committee, and I will throw it over to my co-chairs after I let Peggy say something, because she hasn't said anything for the whole meeting up until now. And then I'll get Elizabeth and Anthony's thought on it. But Peggy Price.
Hi, thank you.
Peggy.
So I just want to suggest, since we aren't getting the information from the horse's mouth this time, would it be better to just wait till the next meeting, or as soon as we can get them to explain what it's all about in layman's terms, in plain English, and then react to it and offer them directly our points of view? We're just talking to each other, but we don't really know what the background is, what the thinking is. I'd like to have us hear from them directly and have us respond to them directly. And if we do it at the next meeting, we might get a little bit better idea of what's going on in Congress and what the budget that they're struggling with has, more information, as we're operating blindly here. That's just my suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks, Peggy. Interesting thoughts. Okay, Michelle?
I agree.
Oh, thank you, Anthony.
Just piping in. Yeah. I'm
glad you did.
I was just going to say, obviously, I have no objection to that. My only concern, and that's perfectly fine, my only concern is I listen, but I never accept explanations about what a bill does or doesn't do, because the sponsors of the bill or the advocates of the bill will explain it to you in the most rose-like, like it's the greatest thing in the world. But until you read it for yourself, you cannot judge the unintended consequences, what it really leaves you open to, you must read it. If you want to do it in the other order and you think we have time, listen to them first, then say thank you very much. But to my mind, we still then have to go back and have a process about reading the bill. So I have no objection to what way you do it. If we read it first and then have them come, we may have more pertinent and intelligent questions to ask because we will have read it and know what we're talking about. But if you want to do it in the reverse, that they're giving us a primer and then we personally delve into it, I have no objection. But under no circumstances would I as a committee member or on the board, take any action on this bill without us reading the bill. I don't care what they tell us about the bill. That's my only concern. However order you want to do it, fine with me.
I don't think, I'm sorry, Michelle, it's funny as you say that. Pardon me for looking away. I'm copying for the chat the link
Problem.
to the text. Where's the chat? Sorry.
Actually, the office sent a link to the text.
Oh, of the entire bill? Oh, great.
Yeah,
thanks,
that's where I got it to read it. I was going to print it, which is when I noticed it was 90 pages. And I said, well, why don't I just try to go through it?
Oh,
so
No,
we do have it.
We didn't send it out. What I'll do is, Ed, if you can send that to me right now, I can put it in the chat, and then I'll put it on the website as well.
Yeah, let me put it in the chat.
It was in one of the mailings though, because I have it. Somebody sent it to me.
There it is, Kevin. And you know what? I have the other. Sorry,
Can I just ask a question while you're looking, Ed, of Kevin?
Sure.
I also got a link to bill from the office to bill 22902, which is a commercial tenant harassment bill. Was there a reason I got that?
Not that I sent. Not that I sent.
That I printed. It was only a few pages. Somebody from the office sent it, but it didn't seem to match the agenda items. So I don't know.
Yeah, by the way, Kevin, what I'm putting in the chat the second time is the 5-page, it's the section by section breakdown by Senator Smith. That's the second link I sent in the chat. Anyway.
But that's the explanation. That's not the text. Correct?
No, the text of the bill is the first one I put in there for Kevin. That's the first, that's the bill itself. And the second one is Senator Smith doing a section by section breakdown of what
of her opinion.
And she's one of the authors of the co-sponsors of the bill, so it's her what she intends the bill to do. So but either way, they're both in the chat, Kevin. I appreciate that to put it out there. Anyway, and hi Rita, and then the things that I have in the PowerPoint are basically, so I basically, if you go to the Congresswoman Ocasio's website, I just copied and put it in a PowerPoint and then took the other research, put that at the end of the PowerPoint. So we had it. That's all. Anyway, Rita.
Point of information. Has this bill passed? I don't know.
No, it's recently. No, I don't even have a number for it. It does. It came in very, very late in the Congress. I don't know the date it was introduced, but it was very late. I don't think it was even referred to a committee for hearing, and the Congress is now over. So this bill would have to be reintroduced. To Peggy's point, I think we'd have to wait for it to be reintroduced with the new Congress going forward, because
But I
it's
said
going
at the
nowhere.
beginning,
Right,
is
it's going nowhere
that
now.
this is just a thought. Very nice thought, but we're talking about dividing up a bill that doesn't exist. So I I suggest that we go on to the next topic.
Okay, all
Thank
right,
you.
all right. Um, let me make sure that I have it queued up. All right, let me see if I can do this. All right, back to share my screen. Um, uh, okay. Does everybody see this power? This is for those of you, there you are at the bottom. For those of you who already went to this, the borough president's office did a leadership series, and some of us went to the one on affordable housing and financing. Again, Anthony and Elizabeth and I, we thought this was very informative. And for those of you again who've been with the housing committee for over the years, again, broken record. Ad nauseum, we talk about this. So these are the folks we were reaching out to. I was trying to, I was trying to do with this group of presenters what I was able to do with the previous bill, but just couldn't do that. So what I thought I would do is something in between. So forgive me. I have the time locations for the points I wanted to at least share with the committee, just the information at least, and to throw out for folks that we would love to have invite the Associate Dean Mark Norman from NYU, the SPS Shack Institute of Real Estate. This is one of the presenters. Uh, uh, Kendra Stensman, also an adjunct professor down there, and Edward Faustin. These are the three presenters we were talking about. I'll just simply go through the first two and again throw it out there for discussion in terms of our invitation going forward. We'd love your thought as co-chairs as to which of the two or three that you'd love to hear from, or if you have thoughts about the information I'm going to show. I'll try not to go too quickly. But areas that you'd like us to focus on more. And with that, I'll just move us along to some basic housing statistics. No, I don't want that. No, I don't want that. So I'll stop sharing my screen. I don't know why it won't let me. I see. Okay. Well, I don't know if that is going to work out. All right, let's try it one more. Let's try it one more time. See if this works. Can you see the stats that I have up on the screen, or yes? Okay, so
Yes.
anyway, I see this is not going to work. My apologies on that. And it looks like And it looks like I've frozen up, even though it appears as if you can probably still hear me. Can you still hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes?
There you
I'll let
there
James
you are.
forward. Well, I'm sorry about
We
that.
could hear
I
you.
don't know. I was hoping to at least queue up the stats for us. Some of the ones I had at least, well, I won't go through them because I don't think it's helpful in terms of me just reading out some of the things they had. I was hoping that we might be able to get the PowerPoint at least from the professor before we got here this evening. So unfortunately, it looks like if we were, I guess, in vaudeville, I would ask people if they know any good jokes or know any good juggling or can do any acts to fill the time. My apologies on that. Like I said, I don't have ostensibly, the stats that we'd seen. At least I can give you some of the stats that I had seen at the beginning that Professor Norman had, which is that I think many of us know, which is that we're a 1.4% vacancy rate, and we have a 330,000 unit deficit. But something I also didn't realize is that not only that 146,000 people sleep in shelters every night, but that 54% of our housing stock apparently was built before 1947. I did not know that. And that 5% of our housing has been built after 2010. And that since to the year 2000, 600,000 units where the rent is $1,500 a month have left the rolls. And that median rent in 2023 is $3,500 a month, which means you have to earn $140,000 a year in order to afford that. Another stat that Dr. Norman passed along, or Professor Norman passed along, was that 52% of all New Yorkers are rent burdened, meaning that they pay more than 30% of their rent, 30% of their income, I should say, on rent. And that since the year 2000, after we lost 600,000 units at $1,500 a month, we have added in their place 75,000 units at over $5,000 a month in rent. Some of the other more interesting stats that they had in terms of just construction, for those of us who have always been curious about construction and how much it costs to build. Some of the things under consideration they talked about was the fact that land is anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a square foot. Hard costs, which basically involve construction, meaning construction costs, are anywhere from $350 to $700 per square foot. Soft costs were anywhere from 20 to 40% of their hard costs. Those include architects, lawyers, permits, administrative costs, I would imagine. Marco and Anthony can speak to that more. Adam, I'm sure, can. Contingency costs are 6 to 10% of construction costs, and that reserves that Professor Norman talked about were 12. That they needed to have in reserves anywhere from 12 to 18 months of debt payments and or operating expenditures as part of the costs of putting up buildings. As I said, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to have the presentation here for us, but like I said, they went through very nicely the components of the financing, how much things cost. Marco, I see you nodding. I think you may have also been there as well. Anyway, I won't go on and on because I'm not really adding any value here, and I will throw it open to the public or to Rita for comments or questions or thoughts.
Whoever put that together, do they look at European countries and the construction costs and I'm not talking about how much wallboard costs or I don't know, a yard of cement or whatever, but I'm talking about the production and are we producing sturdy and yet more economical housing? Have they gone to other countries and did an analysis between yes or no?
I don't know.
Okay.
And I think I missed the first part of your question. I think I was muted, but I'm sorry.
The first part of it is what are the costs of producing housing in other parts of the world? I'm not talking about in, places where the roads are mud. I'm talking about I'm talking about London, I'm talking about Paris, I'm talking about Rome, I'm talking about major cities that are building. I mean, they must have the same amount of people propagating as we do.
Right.
Have they made an analysis? Is Sweden doing a better job in producing their housing than we are? That's all I wanted to know.
Right. I don't, again, I go back, I don't, that's a great question, Rita. I don't know. And again, I think these folks were just talking about here in New York and what's been happening here. I see Marco nodding. Again, I think you were there again, Marco. And if you have anything to add, I'm so sorry that I didn't have the part for the second presenter. Like I said, she has some very interesting stuff, Rita, in terms of, I think what you're getting at in terms of financing and how you get to where you need to be in terms of building, and those kinds of things. Anyway, anybody else?
I don't know. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
I've been on this board a very long time, and I've heard the same story now for almost 18 years. At the beginning, I thought there must be some room to change. I'm not embittered. I'm just accepting that nobody really wants, they know we need affordable housing, but nobody knows how we can build it, because then the next thing they tell us is how expensive it is to build a building. So we keep going around this merry-go-round, and frankly, I'm tired of missing the brass ring. My heart breaks that there are 162,000 homeless children in school, and in New York City, not in the state, not in the outside, in New York City, and they don't have a home. And all this talk isn't going to give them a home either. And I must tell you, I'm really disheartened. And it took a long time to get me to this point. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks for your thoughts, Rita. Always. Anyone else? Hi, Sherry. I see you waving, but I don't know if that's your hand up. Okay. Sherry Weiner.
What I find so discouraging is that just this week in my various political, I guess the East Side website, that they're tearing down more buildings. This one had 33 affordable units in it, and it's being torn down, and they're going to put up another super tall. And I mean, it's a losing battle. If we keep on losing more apartments and we're not building any, the situation just gets worse and worse. So I would like to see, and I don't remember, I think this was the one on First Avenue that, and I don't believe that they're being required to put in affordable housing. My housing experience, as you know, is from New Jersey and Livingston. In New Jersey, every time you put a high rise up, 20% of the apartments have to be affordable, depending on what part of the state it is, and there's no question that's how you get your affordable apartments. 20% is a nice number. I don't see why New York can't do the same thing. I mean, as opposed to that ridiculous thing where they would promise to put affordable housing, 12 miles away down in Brooklyn to make up for it. That's why we don't have housing in Manhattan, because it's too expensive to have affordable housing. But I just, this continuous of tearing down these 3-story buildings and putting up, I mean, it's a losing battle, and I think somebody should address that.
It's an interesting point you raised, Sherry. And the thing is, and I put it in the chat for Kevin. I made a note, Kevin, the link to the presentation I was trying to scroll us through earlier. It's in the chat, so for you all to watch it. The great part about after Professor Norman is that he goes through a few projects in the city in different boroughs. Remember, Marco? One was, I think, at the Bronx. Remember that? And breaking down, really, anybody who's on this call, I see a lot of familiar faces, friends, colleagues. Really go on there for the public watching this later. It's really, really informative, right? I mean, it just really takes you through the projects and how it can be done, building by building, development by development. Anyway, I see Marco nodding, right? It wasn't bad, right? It was really good. Okay, Michelle, sorry. Right ahead.
No, this is a song and dance that Marco innovated, and he and I have been trying to bring it around, not as reps of the community board, but just as people with some thoughts and trying to talk to city planning and proposing, like this community board, we have a resolution that we have special districts on and height limits on York 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Avenue. Now, if we took that one step further and called for R10A zoning, R10A zoning gives us the 210 height limit. However, you then get a 20% bonus and you can go to 230 height limit for 20% affordable housing. Now, that makes so much more sense than having no height limits. So all the buildings go up are 400 feet high, 530, 350 feet high, and they're low density buildings. They have 20 apartments in them. There's no requirement for them to do anything else. And we've banged our heads against the wall with every elected official, with city planning, with Dan Garodnick, with Dan Machen, with everybody. They don't agree. They insist, and I really begged for where the literature is on this, but the belief is that no height limit yields affordable housing. They don't discuss what's torn down of the tenements to build those buildings. When confronted on that, their argument was, no, we're maintaining, we're preserving those tenements because the tenements are now allowed to sell the air rights to the developer of the luxury project. And so he can go high. So look, we're applauded for saving those tenements. Well, it really hasn't worked out that way. In most of the cases, the tenements are knocked down. So, and they say, and that's just good practice. These are architects, these are city planners. I mean, logic, without me, I don't have any of those degrees or expertise, but logic tells me, and what I'm looking at on every corner tells me that that premise is a false one. And I have to tell you, it is not for lack of trying that we are not able to get anybody to jump on board here. We have one person whose ears have perked up, who's maybe going to give us a whirl. But other than that, completely dismissed, unreasonable.
Thanks, Michelle. Um, I I don't know what to say. I have I would just ask to unmute John McClement. Excuse me. Hi, John.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, John.
But, echoing what Michelle and Sherry just said, and Sherry was referring to the buildings on First Avenue at 86th Street on the northwest corner. Those are starting to come down now, just in the last week or so. Across 86th Street on the southwest corner, you have buildings that have been taken down 2 or 3 years ago, and you just have a big hole sitting there. So, I mean, they take them down and then they don't even do anything except make the city look completely unsightly. It looks like when this next one is down, it looks like we've been bombed or something. And why can't we do something to make these developers toe the line? That's all I have to say.
Thanks, John. Well, I learned a great deal of zoning and housing is that as of right, and a lot of these developments are as of right, and there's not much, we can do other than use the bully pulpit and express our opinions and thoughts to our elected officials in the hopes of, doing something.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm sorry. I feel.
Okay.
I wish I had something better for you on that one, John.
Okay.
Anyway, Marco.
Thank you. I think you have to figure it out. The presentation is very good. The professors are very honest, decent. They know what they do it. And the only thing I disagree with them is just only one item. Is they love to use the vacancy rate, and they said the lowest one. Doesn't mean nothing, because nobody knows what it means. According with the expert, the normal vacancy rate, healthy real estate is to have 5%. If you give you that number, now you try to make sense, but it's still, you don't know the magnitude of the problem. What I'm disagree with the professor, this is the only part that I disagree with him. The rest, I learned a lot from him. Is he said that the deficit of housing is 330,000 dwelling units. Well, let me tell you one thing. In 2019, HPD declared that there was 1.1 million of applicants for lottery, for the housing lottery. Okay, 1.1. And then this year, on June, the HPD opened just only for 7 days, and they filed more than 600,000 dwelling units. Then I has been put a pressure to the director of housing of the city planning to tell me, because he's supposed to know that number. This is the only person that's supposed to know the number. And finally, after putting pressure on them, he said is 500,000 dwelling units is the deficit. That is the problem. The problem is you have to quantify. When you quantify, then what is the solution? The solution is the city of yes. The city of yes, they say, we're going to build 109,000 dwelling units in 15 years. That means the only thing you're going to provide a relief is 22%. So numbers doesn't lie. Those numbers is clearly right there. So the point is, city of yes, they do something, but it has to create some complement. One of the complement is Michelle has already addressed the issue of high control of the heights and one specific housing, which is our 10A. Look, the point that I would like to raise is next. You cannot sit on the table to discuss with the developers. You cannot. Or you cannot sit with the empty hands. If you are with the empty hands, let me tell you what happened. Excel came to our community and do the presentation of the project 79 on First Avenue. And he came very defiant to everybody and said, look, I build as of right. Don't come and then complain with me. That's basically what he said. And he was right. He wasn't wrong because the community didn't have nothing to negotiate on the table, nothing. But if we have something that we can negotiate, then we have the case. Then they had to listen what we're doing. So my recommendation is always the position of this community, which is basically is not debatable. The position of this community wall is 210 feet high, period. Nobody should debate that because that is the position of our community. So the only thing is there are some obstructionists that they try to avoid that part. And with just only with the sense to kiss the ring of the developers. That's it. That's nothing more. Because in reality, the deficit is a large deficit for the community. Now, being said that, the other issue that I raise constantly myself, I'm not going to be tired, community board is the densest in the world. So that means, can we start looking to produce more housing in our community? No, it shouldn't be our priority. It should be as a second one. What we had to be prioritized in this meeting is how to preserve, how to protect those residents in our community, our fellow residents that lives in our community, because there are a large group that pay more than 30% of their household income. And a few of them, or maybe it's a lot, I don't have that number, they pay more than 50% of their income. So our efforts in housing, it should be in that direction, because the chair of the community board said, I'm going to try to help to reduce homelessness from the street. Look, this is not the task of the community board. This is the task of all 59 community board, from the mayor, from the state, from the federal government, because it's a very complex issue. The only thing what we had to start thinking is how we have to increase the population of homeless. And those people that are in that direction are those people that pay more than 50% of their income toward the rent. And that is it should be in our direction. Now, with the professor that he put the numbers, and I believe the numbers I think is good, but the only situation is he used the land at the price of $32. So the square footage in one of the developments in the Bronx that he showed, and I have also a picture of that, is $559 per square feet. So if we remove this $32 in Upper East Side, the cost of the land is between 300 and 350. I'm giving you the real numbers. Excel paid the church of Santa Monica $350. So if it's 550, 560 plus 350, we're talking about the square footage to build in the Upper East Side is around $800 or $900 per square feet. So that tells you exactly that to build in the Upper East Side, I don't think is smart. The only way that we have is to negotiate with the developers, but to have something that we can negotiate with them. Look, the developer, I'm going to go back to Excel. You know what he offered to us? Cause Spagnoletti asked him, "What do you want to do for our community? Because we have empty hands." And you know what he offered? An ice cream. Of course. We don't have nothing on the table. We have to have something to negotiate. If we don't understand this principle in business, that you have to sit down with the developer with something, with some power, we're going nowhere. And the only thing they're gonna keep demolishing the affordable housing, expelling low-income housing or middle-income housing from our community. And that is the case of 83rd and 3rd Avenue. 90 dwelling units, they are going to reduce to 50 dwelling units and then to have more benefits. That is wrong. And I think the housing committee should take that project as a flag to fight in our community, because we cannot allow the developer that come in and transfer their right, have some money to do luxury housing, and then reduce affordable housing. In this affordable housing is that in reality, they're going to maintain those families that pay beyond of their affordability. So in other words, we don't get nothing. And that is the biggest problem in our community. We need to work in the 210 feet. Thanks to Elizabeth Ashby. That was one of the leaders in that direction. And I respect her. And I think that is her goal. And I think basically I copy from her. That's basically what it is. And thank you so much. And thank you for listening. And thank you. I took so much time. Thank you.
That's all right, Marco. Thanks, Marco. Always appreciate your thoughts. Rita?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
You put your hand up?
No, well, since I have the floor,
Yeah.
I think that we suffer under one false impression, and that is that you think that all tenements are affordable, and they are not. They are way not affordable, and they are sub-housing. They are walk-ups. They don't have laundry facility, whatever it is, that the idea of keeping them because they're affordable is just a wrong premise. They're not. They're affordable if somebody has been living in the apartment for 50 years. That apartment is affordable. But if there's somebody who's living in there only for 2 or 3 years, that is not an affordable apartment. So when do we get rid of saying that they took down 34 tenements, therefore they took down 34 affordable tenements? They didn't take down 34 affordable tenements. They took down 34 tenants that should have been affordable. And that's,
well,
I'm tired of hearing how the tenements are affordable. My grandson was here last night, and I said that to him. He said, the tenements are not affordable. It's a tenement. And we want to preserve that it's old and it needs to be, it can be refurbished, redone, whatever. Or if they take down a tenement, you can only build a certain height, and it has to be 100% affordable. That's how we would do it. But then someone's going to say to me, developers don't want to do it because there's not enough money in it for them. So it's just a circle, and I'm tired. I'm tired of the circle.
No, Rita, I'm with you 100%. You know that, and I was going to say two things to your point. One, I think Marco, in one of our housing committee meetings a couple of years ago, I can't remember now when it was. Marco, you had to Rita's point about what were rent stabilized, rent controlled, and there was some talk of that. I wish I had written down all the numbers. I had some that to those numbers, by the way, that they had that market rate renters in New York City make up 48% of renters, and they're 1,119,000 market rent renters, by the way, just to give you some numbers on that. And that other rent regulated are 52,570, 167,700 people live in public housing. Rent controlled is 24,000, or 1% of all renters are rent controlled. Rent stabilized post 1973 is 181,000. I think that's what you're getting at, Rita.
Mhm.
And pre 1974 is 34%. That's 779,000. But I know Marco had done something about that. Your point about not all apartments in tenements are rent stabilized. But I was going to say the one of the presenters in the leadership series, um, uh, it was Professor, and I'll hopefully don't mispronounce her last name, Stensman, was talking about financing. I know Adam's on with us. In terms of financing, she was indicating it's much tougher, or not tougher, but there's more to it in terms of financing affordable units, in terms of layering all kinds of financing in order to get where you need to be as well. And that's why we're sorry we couldn't get her at least tonight. And I want to keep the discussion going, but also keep in mind in terms of bringing one of the two back for later, what you all would like to focus on in terms of that. Is it the financing or construction, that kind of thing? Anyway, Michelle, I see you had your hand up, but Sasha, I think we're going to go to you because you haven't said anything this evening. So I see you. Welcome. And
Yeah, thank you. Sorry I was late. I lost track of time, but um, you know, I think what a lot of people feel when it comes to the idea of preserving tenements or affordable housing or things like that is, and this is something I mentioned one time when Alex Boris came to speak about stuff and just kind of hear policy. I think people have a visceral response to the idea of change. So the idea that buildings are being demolished, or if you live in a tenement, that could be your building being demolished. And I do say this as someone who lives in a tenement, who grew up in this tenement, that my family has been here. So very much so the idea of, oh, there's a change in ownership. Could that happen? And I think, and I don't actually think New York City will ever adopt this, but I think if the development community or the city had a more similar policy to like a first right of return, people would encourage new development because Rita's correct. A lot of tenements are falling apart. My building was renovated in 74, and if your unit has been occupied since then, you've had no renovations since then. I'm lucky that I have an elevator, but that was a new renovation. So, when you look at accessibility and things like that, there's a merit to new buildings. But I always say, and I say this casually at work, when we talk about why can't we produce housing the way we used to, is because the city and private developers were just slapping together tenements that didn't have all these codes about, well, the unit size has to be this and the kitchen has to be this. So you could get a whole block full of buildings in no time. You could fit 10, 15, 20 units in a 5-story building. With our current zoning, city of yes or not, you're not able to do that. You simply can't. Even if their units are also 700 square feet and a tenement is also 700 square feet, it just can't be built in the same way. So sometimes I muse, well, why don't we go back to just like slapping together little buildings, or there's a great article talking about if we built mid-rise everywhere. And I think people have a less visceral response to mid-rise than high-rise. So if everywhere, the random McDonald's that you see are only 1 story, and I don't know why McDonald's all over the city is only 1 story, but it's like all over the place. If those were all 10, 15-story buildings and you just kind of filled everything in, is that a way to deal with that? But unfortunately, the financing, the underwriting, especially to get income restricted affordable housing units, is really impeded when you want to provide those extremely low Ella units. You have to bring in that many more market rate. Like all of these projects cross subsidize. And honestly, 485X is a worse deal than 421A for developers, especially from the labor end of things. I work in the city. This is a problem, um, so I don't think we'll see that in the same way. And I do think the Upper East Side lacks what we consider like easy development potential because we're oversaturated. So we don't have really vacant lots. We just have tenements that are bought and sold, and that's it. And I certainly can't fault, tenement owners or garage owners for doing that. But a lot of tenement apartment units are still far more affordable if we're talking in a range of affordable for someone to move into than any kind of, building that has a doorman or more amenities. So they still are the affordable housing. The Upper East Side, Yorkville specifically, was like a center of workforce housing for this neighborhood because of Rupert Brewery. And I think people forget that is part of like the backbone of New York. And I'm certainly not advocating like we have to save the tenement, but there are people who have been here in tenements for years. And quite frankly, tenements are the buildings being bought and demolished. It's not, the post-war apartment building. It's not even apartment buildings that are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stories. It is the 5-story tenement. So, sometimes there can be a lot of tenement hate, as someone who lives and grew up in one, and my family has been here, there's a merit to why they're here. I think we all know they suck. Like if you live in one, no one's like, this is a great place to live amenity wise. But I just think if there were other mechanisms of a way to change the narratives that people are more open to the idea of development or I when it comes to like income restricted units, I think it's difficult. Because it's either cross subsidized or not. And I think because we don't have as much potential for those kind of new developments with cross subsidizing lower income units, it ends up being that the tenement is our affordable housing that people feel this is what we should be focusing on and preserving, or just not having, Extel come and buy up every corner on 86th Street or 79th Street or, everywhere they've operated. And
72nd.
That's just my 2 cents on that.
Well, appreciate it. By the way, it's 72nd, by the way, down the block from me. 72nd and 2nd. They got the corner there too.
Oh, that's them?
I don't know who has that corner, but the to your point, that's
Oh,
another
that one.
corner in the
Yeah.
neighborhood where,
Oh,
to everyone's
completely.
point, they're talking about that's been going on for a while.
Yeah,
So that one will be coming across from the subway.
I'm sure. Thank
Uh,
you.
anyway, but it's always nice to see. It's always interesting to see, by the way, the ads from back in the day that were on
Yes.
the, because
Yes.
now they knock them down, then you see them, and I always tell my son, take a peek now.
Yeah,
You won't
I
see it.
take
You won't
pictures
see
of
it.
it.
You won't see it for a while.
Hmm.
Okay, Michelle.
Yeah, I just want to make 2 points, and one of which I want to give Marco credit again, because when we're all talking about the tenements being substandard housing, really, and Marco, you don't tout your own ideas. I have to do it for you. His suggestion, and it's an excellent one, is when a developer buys the air rights from that tenement, one of the provisions should be of that transaction that, number one, the tenement write all the violations that are on that building. They are not required to do that. And secondly, that they use a portion, a percentage of that profit to upgrade the property. Marco's idea. So I just wanted to tell you, but the city of Yes was not interested in that either. There are a lot of good ideas out there. I am not for overbuilding every neighborhood, and I am not for taking the right away from somebody who saved up for their whole life to buy a one-family home on a 60 by 80 plot or anything bigger than that, to then have the zoning changed midstream or have an accessory dwelling unit permitted on that. I think those neighborhoods are sacred, and I don't think that those neighborhoods should be imposed like that. But for me, I'm dropping this topic at the moment because I think now we're just wishing and hoping and whatever. But I do have a final suggestion, and again, it's just a suggestion on agenda item number 1. All bills start as intros. None of them are come to fruition or brought to the floor as bills until they're brought to the floor as bills. Once it's brought to that position, it's really too late to try to get on a treadmill and catch up. I think it's prudent if you thought that this was important enough to bring to the committee, and I think we have to have a mechanism to examine it so that we are ready for if and when it goes away. It comes, it's brought to the floor. If it never is, we'll go down as having read 20 pages without purpose. But I think you have to be prepared.
I get your point, Michelle. No question about it. But I think I forgot who it was that brought it up. It was an Anthony or somebody.
You can do the other one first, as Peggy's proposed. I don't mind that, but I say let's not drop it because we think, maybe it's never going to happen.
How about this caveat, Michelle? If they reintroduce it, because right now it is effectively dead, and the reason we brought it up, I'll be honest with you, the reason we brought it up is before the election. I think we all thought, I'm not going to say who we thought would win or lose or anything like that. There was a thought that one of the houses in Congress, one of the chambers, might be in Democratic controlled hands, which are the sponsors of this bill. So it might move, it might be lending to the debate. And since we had a local congresswoman, so I think in terms of practical, I think Peggy had also pointed that out. Look, if it's also, it had only been dropped in the hopper. I mean, once it's in the hopper, it's not coming back for a while. It's going to committee. So, at that point, as you know, it's going to get amended. It's going to get marked up before it even hits the rules committee. So I think, just staying in terms of time management going forward on it, that, one, if the senator and the congresswoman reintroduce it, I think we bring it back and we get the new version. And then at that point, I think it would be referred out to whatever committee it is. And then I think it's a great opportunity for us to throw our 2 cents into, because as you said, and as we've noted, the bill is not local in nature. It is national in nature. Right. And we, of course, are, like every other.
Right. And I would have great concerns about that. Sure. So that's fine. As long as somebody's following it to make sure that if it's reintroduced, because I wouldn't count on, you never know how people will vote. You think you have a majority on this or that, and you never know.
Yeah, no one. Well, this doesn't even have a bill number, so I mean, it's not going anywhere, and it couldn't go anywhere at this point anyway.
Okay,
so anyway,
fair enough. Understood.
Appreciated. Anyway, Rita, I see your hand up, and then I see we have Peggy's hands up too.
I'm trying to take it down, but now that it's up.
Okay.
Our population is different than when lower buildings were built. We can't accommodate the population in 5-story buildings. We just can't. And we have to realize that. And even when we had big buildings, such as, where does Dan Garodnick live? Stuytown. We had Stuytown that was built for the soldiers who were coming back from war. And here we have these magnificent large buildings, and we made them market rate. And we did the same thing with all of these other, we did affordable housing in the in the early 1970s, or the late 1960s. We're still talking about tenements. At any rate, can we move the agenda, please?
We can. Be a good idea. Peggy? That's fine. I think we move if we Peggy.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. I just want to throw out a thought that's been on my mind for a long time. In terms of what we call middle income housing or somewhat affordable housing, which is we have seen, at least with one hospital in New York, I think it was MSK, that they built a hospital for their nurses so that the nurses could be close to the hospital and afford to live on the Upper East Side. Now, I have never understood why other employers can't in some way provide housing for their employees, if not entirely, as MSK did, then perhaps offer as a employee benefit some sort of subsidies. It could be an part of the menu of employee benefits that you could choose from, but something where the employers would be helping their employees live in New York City. And you don't hear about that. And I don't understand why. It seems to me that it would be, someone should be talking about this. It doesn't have to be a citywide policy or enacted into law necessarily or anything like that. But I think that employers should be encouraged to find some way to help their employees afford housing in the 5 boroughs of New York. And I'm just going to throw that out. Thank you.
Thanks, Peggy. Really appreciate it. Well, that's a great thought. In the interest of moving the agenda, as Rita suggested, I see a lot of nodding. I'm going to throw it back to Elizabeth, and I think we will send it over to Anthony, or I will send it over to Anthony to
Why
handle
not?
old and new business.
Okay. Just very quickly, when the United Nations moved to New York in 1947, part of their plan was to provide housing in Queens, ironically, for employees, and one of the, not all of them, but a great number of them. And the idea, excuse me, that they had in the original design, the idea that showing, well, if you live this far away, it'll take you this long to get here. And we're planning on doing this. And in fact, Trigley, the first Secretary General, lived in Queens. That was where his official residence was. They later moved it somewhat closer on Sutton Place, but that was anyway, it was the original thought. Okay, old business. Good. I see none. Is there new business? Once again, no hands raised. I suspect it's time for us to entertain a motion to adjourn. Michelle?
A lot of hands on that.
Yes. Second?
A lot of hands.
Rita, Peggy, Sherry, Sasha. Okay, Sahar. All right. So unless there's some furious objection, we are adjourned, and we will see you all tomorrow night. Thank you.